Hey, you're listening to Trigger Warnings. Challenging Talk Radio. Trigger Warnings. Challenging Talk Radio featuring John Ross and Chris Smith. This is show number 12, recorded here on November 21st, 2016. John Ross is on the line.
I am. How are you, sir?
I'm good. We're doing this. We've recorded this podcast at all hours. And now tonight, it's already late. It's fantastic. And we've got what's that?
It is almost the 22nd in certain parts of the country, although not ours. It may be 22nd by the time we finish this broadcast, but yes, it is a reflective Monday night as we
roll on into the Thanksgiving week.
We are in the Thanksgiving week, and how interesting it is, especially that the article that you've submitted this week is about, to a certain extent, how will certain family members, if at all, share the holiday with one another? And will there be fatalities?
Yeah, like when her grandmother unfriended her on Facebook. It was not hard to take it personally. Now she's nervous about Thanksgiving. And another Georgetown University Law Center student said he is skipping Thanksgiving altogether because of lingering resentments in his family over the election. After he posted an anti-Trump message on Facebook, his father stopped talking to him, and his mother's ex-husband threatened to write him out of his will. This is coming from the Washington Post, an article called "After Trump's Election, there are two Americas now." It's really grim.
As if there weren't two Americas before November 8th. But yes.
Well, Robert De Niro said he felt like he did after 9/11. He didn't understand why it happened, and he didn't understand what it meant, what was going to happen next, what were the ramifications. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I mean, we're not drawing a 9/11 comparison. I'm not going that libtard. But
come on.
But the way that we feel about these things, we can only feel about them in certain ways. We only know certain ways to react. About 9/11, it was pretty easy to pick which side to be on. And this election has had the rhetorical impact of 9/11, and people can choose which side to be on. And that's why this article appears in the Washington Post. Minority. Yeah?
There have been about 150 of these articles in the less than 2 weeks since the election. In fact, Saturday Night Live did a really good parody the other night of the new bubble and where progressives could go now, where they could think whatever they wanted with only with people who thought like they did. Which essentially is Brooklyn with a bubble over it. And it is interesting because in the article you shared, there are people, Trump supporters, pushing back saying, no, this two Americas thing is a creation of the media. It's not real. We're not as divided as we think. These are professional paid agitators who are out demonstrating, which, as it turns out, there were professional paid agitators demonstrating at that Trump rally in Chicago you and I talked about and that I attended way back in March. So it's very interesting that it seems to me there are more than two Americas.
There are no more paid agitators now. right?
Why? Because everybody's an independent contractor?
No, I mean, the election is over, and the election is what brought us Hill bots and other paid agitators, right? Or do you think that people are actively spending money towards being agitators?
I don't know. I think when this article talks about two Americas, it's clear that there are at least four. Because there are the two Americas that are thrown out here. You know, the cleavage of Trump voters and Clinton voters, and the cultural divide and how they don't want to talk to each other or have Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. But there's also the other two Americas that are reflected in some of the comments of the people in this article, which are that the Trump people, the Trump voters who felt and feel oppressed, not just by the system, but by what they refer to as political correctness, that they were embarrassed and, in fact, even shunned or threatened if they had gone public with their support for Trump during the campaign. So, you know, what some people call the silent Trump voter. And then on the flip side, there's the Clinton voter who automatically project that anyone of 62 some million people who voted the other way is a racist or a sexist and or whatever because people voted that way. So we don't just have the two cultures of we voted for Clinton and we don't agree with this and we think this is wrong, and the Trump people who say we voted for Trump. But then there's those other two groups who feel, either Trump voters who say, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I just want to change. And then the Clinton voters who say, no, you're all racist. Those are at least four.
Yeah. And you know what? I appreciate the Washington Post trying to move it along a little more than taking two Americas and splitting it into four. Here's your moral choice. Should one stay angry and resist at all costs the idea of normalization, right? Or should one reach out, listen and understand? Now, I'm reading this from the article. Or should one reach out, listen and understand because, as some believe, a lack of empathy is what led to Trump's rise. And I do feel like individuals need to make a choice. And those that want to resist normalization of a President-elect Trump and the behavior that comes with, I understand that. I have not yet stood in the street for that reason, because I do believe a lack of empathy is what led to Trump's rise. I can't look at Facebook without something happening towards politics. I can't. And I think a lot of people feel that way. It's not going to last. It's not going to last. Maybe the holidays will wash us clean of this, right?
Well, interestingly, as you know, I don't use Facebook or hardly any social media at all, so that's not an issue for me. I have felt, not 100%, but rather than listening to news public affairs programs on my Sirius XM radio when I'm driving, I listen to stand-up comedy. I listen to, Jim Gaffigan and Jeff Foxworthy and whoever's on talking about, whatever dumb subject is the platform for a comedy routine. And I follow the news, and I'm aware that there's an alt-right leader and supremacist or nationalist in the White House, the most important job in the White House, the counselor to the president, and that there's a guy who 30 years ago referred to a black deputy as boy, and therefore was denied in a Republican Senate a federal judgeship, and he's now going to be Attorney General. one Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. Note, never appoint someone to an important federal job if he is named for a Southern general.
So wait a minute. You're going down this road, and I have a feeling.
No, I'm going down.
Well, wait. Is that because you want to stay angry and resist at all costs the idea of normalization of somebody like Jeff Sessions?
So to your question, that is part of the trap. And actually, when I had submitted this to you about the idea that I sent you an article about infrastructure and how the Trump infrastructure plan is drawing a lot of interest, including in the article I sent you from Bernie Sanders, that there are now Democrats and columnists, pundits, who are telling the Democrats, don't support Trump on infrastructure. It's a trap. It's part of the effort to normalize him while he does all these right-wing things with immigration and catering to the alt-right and all that. And so, what's interesting is that, in essence, for 8 years, well, at least 6, when they had at least one House of Congress, the Republicans basically did that. They basically said, we're going to fight everything, even if it's good policy, even if it's Republican policy. We're not going to normalize this president. And they didn't. And they shut down the government once, and they were close to shutting it down again. And apparently their strategy worked. And because they didn't care about policy. They didn't care if Obama presented good ideas. And so now the argument, to your point, from many in the Democratic side is, no, don't let this debate become about policy, because if you, Bernie Sanders, or if you, Chuck Schumer, or whoever you are, allow yourself to be sucked in and support Donald Trump on a piece of policy that is a Democratic initiative like infrastructure that Republicans refuse to even listen to when a Democratic president put it up, you are going to normalize it, and that is not good. And so the question is, are we spiteful, irrespective of national needs and policy needs, like infrastructure, like building roads and all that? And that's kind of where this is. And I think it would have been this way had Clinton been elected, and a Republican House majority and possible Senate majority would have said the same thing. They were not going to have a Supreme Court justice for 4 years. They were going to let the Supreme Court die off by attrition before they were going to hear anybody or give anybody a hearing. So the scenario. I don't think the scenario is going to be different in this thing, except Democrats are much more prone or much less disciplined to focus on actual policy and things that can be done for the country than Republicans are. And so now there are people saying, oh, Democrats, don't do anything with Trump. Don't normalize him by partnering with him on a piece of policy.
But wait a minute. I appreciate your expertise in policy, but listen to this quote. I'm all for empathy, but empathy is not agreement. There's a moral imperative here. You can't be for or against racism. You have to be against it. You have to agitate for what I think it's agitate for what you believe in. And that comes from a guy who wrote a Washington Post piece that is quoted in this Washington Post piece.
No, it's Leon Whistletear, who's an activist writer.
Right.
Yeah. Stay angry, he says. That's the only way to uphold principles.
So, I mean, it's a moral imperative. Do you agree?
To be angry?
Well, to be angry, that doesn't mean you can't. I mean, I think Sanders did a great job on the Sunday morning show with Chuck Todd in saying, I will not at all costs resist the idea of normalization. I will resist the President-elect Trump and his behavior, but I will work with him however and wherever I can to benefit the American people. But I appreciate anybody in the street that's saying this is a moral imperative. You can't be for or against racism. What strikes me most is how that becomes very little to do with Trump and more to do about how neighbors are treating neighbors.
Exactly. So that so I mean, I am in perhaps the big, currently one of the major bubbles in the country, in Illinois, specifically Chicago, which voted overwhelmingly for Clinton and is now literally surrounded by red states because the states that weren't supposed to go red, that were part of the blue firewall, went red. So now Iowa, Wisconsin, Indiana, 3 states that voted once or twice for Obama, are red, and then all of our states on our southern border, Kentucky and Missouri, are red. I'm in a bubble where people refuse to acknowledge that anybody who voted for Trump is anything but a racist, because you have to be a racist, because he's a racist. So, I mean, there are a lot of tautologies here, right? You vote, Trump said racist things, Trump is a racist, you vote for Trump, you're a racist. Trump is a racist, he supports policy X. If you support policy X, you're in bed with a racist, right? The whole essence of pluralism, the whole essence of democracy as we've practiced it for the most part for 200 and some years, really has gone completely out the window, shut to hell. That there is no, at least rhetorically, by the standard, there is no compromise, that you cannot lie down with the devil, even if the devil is promoting an initiative that is useful, that could help people, that could put people to work, etc. That's the thing. So it's all or nothing, or more properly, nothing or nothing. And I find it very hard to, as much as I detest that Donald Trump and what he stands for, and how he has gotten to this point, I can't live that way.
You can't live which way?
I can't live the way where I have to make everything about him and those who support him the embodiment of evil. I can't do it. One, because not everything is black and white. And two, if we just stay that way, we're never going to go anywhere. I mean, I just can't live that way.
You're listening to Trigger Warnings, Challenging Talk Radio. We're two happy people here on a Monday night, reflective, looking at the Washington Post article after Trump's election. There are 2 Americas now, written by a host of authors. I encourage you to check it out online.
Not 2 Americas, there are at least 4.
Will there be some sort of widespread outbreak of empathy?
Only on this show, and I told you that we are post empathy. I think we're going to post empathy. What gets to me, I mean, the article I share with you gets a little bit more into the kind of cultural back and forth that's gone on here.
Yeah, it's a real uplifting scenario.
That on one level I understand, because there really are people of color, people wearing hijabs, people who don't look white, who don't look, who look brown, who are brown and look brown, of people being harassed and intimidated by nutcases coming out and saying that, believing that they have carte blanche to act ridiculously and paint swastikas all over the place. And then there's this kind of white liberal bloodletting.
Why has Obama not spoken up? When it comes to swastikas on walls, what we called hate speech for quite a few years now, and it used to be like really newsworthy, noteworthy. Why has Obama not come out and said, "Look, can we calm down"? I don't understand why he wouldn't say that. I don't know what
he is saying is that Trump is not nuts. I mean, that's what he's saying. What he's saying is,
which is not condemning swastikas, which I think we shouldn't have to, but apparently we do.
So therefore, by not condemning swastikas, are we endorsing them?
No.
But I think that's the point. Look, this is.
Well, look here. Yes, you have a point to wrap that up with, because that would be brilliant.
First of all, I think we're in the rabbit hole. I just don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is whacked out, but I mean, Obama is playing a very clever game of apprentice, where he is trying to be a stable force, helping educate the incoming president as to how to do the job, being a good guy, and also trying to protect his legacy. And he's probably trying to charm the pants off Trump. Meanwhile, Trump is sending out angry tweets to Broadway cast members about harassing his vice president who doesn't even care. So, it seems like a lot of people, and this is what was expected, a lot of people are really acting very hard to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't go absolutely nuts and do something that everybody will regret. Mike Pence is saying, don't worry, this is what democracy sounds like. You go to a theater in New York, you get booed. Nobody cares. Obama, no, he's going to support NATO, and he's not going to do anything weird. Don't worry, it's okay. I expect Bobby McFerrin to start singing any second. And so I think that's what you're seeing. You're seeing Mitt Romney flying coach, waiting for a cab to be driven to a golf club to do a photo op with Trump. And by God, Mitt Romney might just be the Secretary of State. Why? Well, probably because he read Peggy Noonan's article that you shared and that we talked about a week ago, saying, yeah, I got to do my patriotic thing because this guy's a nutcase. And, I'm not a war hawk. And, yeah, I got to do my part for my country so we don't get blown off the face of the earth. This is kind of what's happening.
To say the theater should always be a safe space really, really characterizes the arts and humanities. And you can look back at who played Atlantic City, right? What big shows, even today, who's getting $70 a ticket to play the Borgata in Atlantic City? And it makes me realize when Trump tweeted that, it made me realize his vision of culture. Of course, it's something like casino capitalism, a phrase I think we should revive from the early debates. But more largely, what is the experience that you expect when you go to the theater and it is not one in which you are challenged in any way, right? It needs to be a safe space. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe it.
So what part couldn't you believe that he went after the cast for admonishing Mike Pence?
No. Whatever. That's the nuance of it. The larger principle is the theater should always be a safe space.
And that was uttered by the cast members of Hamilton?
No, that was uttered by Trump in a tweet. I believe it was his first tweet. Oh, I can pull it up here. I was not
Okay. All right.
prepared, but yes. I mean, the theater as safe space. You can't buy that, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what. Oh, I am looking at the Las Vegas show list.
Oh, you're busy looking at who's playing Vegas.
So I mean, Tony Orlando is playing Vegas.
And also, they're billing it as Together on Stage again for the first time. John Cleese and Eric Idle.
Are they really?
This
Oh, I
weekend,
don't-
yes.
John Lovitz and Dana Carvey are reunited in Vegas.
Quote, the theater, capital T theater, must always be a safe and special place, period. The cast of Hamilton was very rude last night to a very good man. Comma Mike Pence apologized. Safe and special place. Safe. Safe? That's why Tony Orlando is playing Vegas. Give me another safe act out of Vegas, right?
Well, I'm looking.
Give me anything that takes any risk whatsoever. I mean,
In
really.
Vegas, Celine Dion definitely doesn't do that. Are Penn and Teller challenging or anything by Cirque du Soleil? Maybe.
I would put those guys in a different category. I don't know enough about them. Those guys I would suspect. Everybody else, probably not. You're listening to Trigger Warnings, Challenging Talk Radio. We're talking American culture. We ended up talking about the Donald Trump cast of Hamilton feud, but John doesn't know it. He's got the first. We're in limbo here in this American democracy, and I think every show where we're in limbo, as we wait for the president-elect to put his hand around the neck of our democracy, I think every week I'm going to come up with a quiz for John about...
Oh,
Yes. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It comes from all places, okay? And we'll start with an easy one. On November 6th, 2016, CNN's Matt Lewis called Trump A, a conservative, B, a liberal, or C, an extraterrestrial.
An extraterrestrial.
No, the answer is a liberal. November 6th. Okay, we move on. An actual Hillary Rodham Clinton lunch order from the Podesta WikiLeaks. A, chicken salad. B, Sabra hummus and string cheese. C, hot dog with no bun. Or D, baked potato wedges.
Well, if it's B, it would explain a lot because Sabra hummus had a recall today for some really awful infectious disease. So I'm just going to go with that one.
You know what? It's funny because Sabra hummus and string cheese is all I ate for the last 3 days. So I'm really excited to find out how I'm going to be feeling tomorrow. No, the answer is C. Hot dog with no bun.
Well, there's something phallic to that. But
You couldn't make that up, right? You couldn't make that up. All right, question 3.
I'm not doing very well in the quiz.
You're not doing very well, but you're gonna come back. I know you're gonna come back. They do get harder. Mitt Romney lived as a Mormon missionary in France. There you go. No multiple choice necessary. The source of the Joe Biden memes. Is it A, Julian Assange, B, Edward Snowden, C, Obama for America, or D, the Clinton Foundation? You've seen those Biden memes. You haven't seen them?
No, I have not.
Oh,
I would
goodness.
say it's Obama for America.
No, the answer in my book is the Clinton Foundation. So Democrats have something to laugh at, and Joe Biden.
Oh,
Did you?
interesting. The news the word that came out today is that they're looking at making Joe Biden kind of the interim chairman emeritus of the Democratic National Committee until they could find some young Congress member to take over. This tonight from Tim Ryan, who's challenging Nancy Pelosi for the speaker, for the minority leader. And my sense is, and this shows you how, how just down and out, not down and out, but how ridiculous it is. If the Democrats do not get rid of Nancy Pelosi, I don't want to hear from them. And I have nothing against Nancy Pelosi, except her best years were 10 years ago when she became Speaker of the House. And she ran it for 4 years, and since the Democrats have collapsed. In what job do you oversee several collapses and a loss of power and get to keep your job? So how, if they're not even going to talk about getting rid of her, I don't want to hear from them.
All right, we're moving on with the quiz here on Trigger Warnings. John, your next question.
Malfeasance. Go ahead.
The name of John Podesta's spirit cooker. Is it A, Evarb Marana, B, Nancy Pelosi, C, Mariana Huffington, or D, Mariana Abramovic?
Yeah, I think it was Mariana D.
Correct.
Yes. But
that was a good one, right? Wasn't that good?
It's an excellent multiple choice.
Hold on, I'm crossing them out so I don't answer the same one. Here's the only open-ended, non-multiple choice answer in tonight's Trigger Warnings Limbo Democracy Quiz. What role does Sarah Palin deserve in the Trump administration?
Well, the answer is none, but...
what role will she get?
She will get none, although they want the liberal intelligentsia and the media to think she's going to be Secretary of Interior.
Speculate as to something interesting on the table at the Palin family Thanksgiving.
Something large and black.
That was your bonus question. Okay. Jeff Sessions said he was okay with what group until he found out they smoked pot? Was it A, the Grateful Dead, B, the NAACP, C, the KKK, or D, the Huxtable family?
The Grateful Klan, yes.
Okay. Oh, 3 more. These are the tough ones.
I'm now above 50%. I have recovered, as you predicted.
I'm glad you're keeping score. Chelsea Clinton's husband is A, John Podesta's godchild. B, David Gergen's love child. C, George Soros's nephew. Or D, George Soros's bitch.
So it could be more than one.
No, but that's not an option on this multiple choice quiz.
I'm pretty sure it's John Podesta's love godchild or whatever it is.
No, George Soros's nephew, truly.
Really?
Yeah. And that's why the choice between C and D. But no, you didn't know that? Oh.
I didn't. I thought it was John Podesta.
Chelsea 2020, baby. Look out. Look out. Drill, baby, drill. Okay, 2 more. The Taj Mahal of Atlantic City. What year was the groundbreaking and what year was the opening? Was it 1983 and 1990 1987 and 1991, 1979 and 1985, or D, the Trump Taj Mahal of Atlantic City was never built?
That sounds right. The last one? Or it's either A or D, but I'll go with D.
The answer's A, 1983. Groundbreaking 1983, grand opening 1990. All right, and your last question in tonight's trivia.
No,
Don't you love the quiz? You didn't see this coming.
I love the quiz. This is very good. And of course, many of the answers I knew without needing the multiple choice.
This one, you're gonna get out a calculator. Okay, get ready. This is a good one. This is like Final Jeopardy. If Hillary Rodham Clinton serves as much time as Nelson Mandela, how old will she be when she rises
96.
again if her term begins on Inauguration Day?
90. Well, she's 69, and 27 years if she started today would be 90. She would be 96, and therefore she'd be president in 2044. Because that would be the first election after 27 years in prison she could run.
Clinton 2044. Is that what you're saying?
Right, and her running mate will be Bernie Sanders, who will be 102 or 101 or whatever.
All right, well, there it is. John, you won. You won tonight's quiz.
What have I won?
We all won. We all won because we got to laugh. These are two really depressing articles. Here on Trigger Warnings Challenging Talk Radio, we're always trying to, keep on the sunny side of the street. And
no, we're not, because we're post-radical empathy.
No, I insist on radical empathy. I will not continue unless I can embrace at least 99% of the world in radical empathy.
You can embrace me with radical empathy, big boy.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, what about this whole, can identity liberalism still embrace itself? Tell me what you know about this Sunday New York Times article.
This is from the New York Times over the weekend by Mark Lilla, and it generated a lot of falderall and brouhaha.
Where? At your house?
But,
I mean, really, no. I mean, did somebody, respond to this in a big way? Tell me more.
In the bubble that is the New York Times, there was a lot of
falderall. Oh, I see. You can't just say falderall and brouhaha and let it slide.
But there's such good words. Falderall, I mean, well, what he gets at here is that the identity politics of the left don't work. They didn't work because, and he says this really well without going where I would go with it. But he says Hillary Clinton, for example, was at her best and most uplifting when she spoke about American interests in world affairs and how they relate to our understanding of democracy. But when it came to life at home, she tended on the campaign trail to lose that large vision and slip into the rhetoric of diversity, calling out explicitly to African American, Latino, LGBT, and women voters at every step. This was a strategic mistake. If you are going to mention groups in America, you had better mention all of them. If you don't, those left out will notice and feel excluded, which, as the data show, is exactly what happened with white working class and those with strong religious convictions. Now, that's very interesting because if you flip that theory, that when Donald Trump talks about identity politics and only includes or implicitly includes only white people in it, don't all the other people feel hurt and left out? So if it's true one way, it's got to be true the other. And his argument is that that the focus on diversity has, to the American left, made them essentially narcissistically unaware of conditions outside their self-defined groups and indifferent to the task of reaching out to Americans in every walk of life. If you talk about college, this kind of individualistic sense, talk about your own identity above all others. And what's interesting about this is it kind of implicitly suggests that not only what a lot of the WikiLeaks stuff brought up, but what even some commentators have said in the last couple of weeks, which is that the Clinton campaign really should be thrown in jail for malfeasance, political malfeasance in running this campaign, ignoring Catholics, ignoring working class white voters, seeing turnarounds in some rural and exurban counties in the north, in the Midwest, 30% turnaround from Obama 2012 to Clinton 2016. That we just there's just certain people whose diversity we're not interested in. We're not really interested in Catholics. We're not really interested in working class white people. We're just going to forget about them. We'll leave them out. We'll call them deplorable. We'll run our campaign. Oh, by the way, we'll lose. And I think there's some real point to this, and it's reflected in, bloodletting and people being in their corners and being in bubbles. But I think there's a very, very constructive point to this. So what I'm asking you is,
yes,
first of all, do you think that the Clinton campaign deserves to be thrown in jail for campaign malfeasance, for just completely, overlooking entire groups of people, and not visiting states where they live and losing them, like Wisconsin? And is there a premise to this? Is that there's too much of a focus among Democrats and the left on diversity, because diversity implicitly, and in the case of this election, explicitly leaves out certain people? Do you accept that?
No, I'm absolutely worn out by this. As someone that grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs and then moved to Vermont, I feel well versed in the late 1990s, early 2000s ideas of identity politics inside of liberalism. I feel well versed in that. So when this article says a post-identity liberalism would also emphasize that democracy is not only about rights, it also confers duties on its citizens, such as the duties to keep informed and vote. Now, that sounds like citizenship merit badge, designed by the Boy Scouts of the 1970s. A post-identity liberal press would begin educating itself about parts of the country that have been ignored. No shit, really? This is the end of a very large political era. You said earlier in this program that this election creates an unprecedented scenario, right, across 200 years of history. And I would agree. And for liberalism to choke on its own vomit might be okay. I want to make mention of Richard Rorty. And there was an article...
Yes, that's what you sent me, and I can't find it.
Okay, well, I'm going to mention it here, and I'll direct people to an article that is titled "Philosopher Richard Rorty Chillingly Predicts the Results of the 2016 Election," back in a 1998 copy of Open Culture. And this article kind of seems like philosophical clickbait. Where did Trump come from? And this says, Rorty said the cultural left had come, quote, to give cultural politics preference over real politics and to mock the very idea that democratic institutions might once again be made to serve social justice. And Rorty, this article phrases it in that Rorty predicted the backlash that is the election of Donald Trump, when all of the sadism all the sadism which the academic left has tried to make unacceptable to its students will come flooding back. So I put this on Facebook and I said, anybody, but specifically one of the noted scholars of Richard Rorty, is this fair? Is this for real? Because if this is true, in combination with the article you brought to the table, the New York Times, The End of Identity Liberalism, it's such a shakeup. This person said, yes, Rorty recognized the gains of the cultural left in altering how we treat each other through assigning Toni Morrison novels and the like, but his worry was that the cultural left in the 90s had become enamored of sophisticated theoretical critiques and convinced themselves that engaging in deconstructive readings of texts or Dylan lyrics, I add that, was enough. On his reading, the academic left turned its back on electoral politics, changing laws, and the need to worry about economic injustice to decry cultural stigma. This is where it gets good. Rorty said the left should, quote, put a moratorium on theory, and observed, rather provocatively at best, that, quote, nobody is setting up a program in unemployed studies, homeless studies, or trailer park studies, because the unemployed, the homeless, and the residents' trailer parks are not other in the relevant sense. Do you think Rorty called it in this way? He asks,
Well,
in a loaded question kind of way.
The New York Times just ran a story about this yesterday, and that's what I'm reading while you're going through this. And I see that quote here: "Nobody's setting up a program in unemployed studies." He then went beyond that, saying, "The world economy will soon be owned by a cosmopolitan upper class, which has no more sense of community with any workers anywhere than the great American capitalists of the year 1900. He says intellectuals are quite well insulated, at least in the short run, from the effects of globalization. Outside the academy, Americans still want to feel patriotic. They still want to feel part of a nation which can take hold of its destiny and make itself a better place. Do you think Donald Trump was reading Richard Rorty? Because it sure sounds like achieving our country was on the minds of the people who plotted out this strategy. I think Rorty understood in the sense of kind of like the historical tides that change, where we rock back and forth between left and right, between outward looking and inward looking, etc. But essentially, what he embodies in this is the sense that Americans like optimism, that they vote for the candidates who have a positive edge to what they say, and he uses Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan and Barack Obama as examples. Yet Donald Trump completely overturned that. Donald Trump didn't really have a positive message, didn't really have an optimistic message. It's pretty good, though. I mean, it's a very interesting. It's a very interesting writing, considering that he died in 2007. It's pretty good. And again, what he brings out is how did the left not figure out a way to, as it did during the Depression, as it did through many parts of the history of this country, in forming governing coalitions between, rural Southerners, conservative segregation of Southerners, and northern Rust Belt blacks and white ethnics. What happened to the left's ability to capture and to respond to the frustration and fear of workers?
I don't think they tried. I don't think they tried. I think big labor was in their pocket from the start.
Right.
You know, besides inevitability, what else does she have? It didn't matter. It didn't matter. I don't think they were trying to. They weren't trying to build a coalition, right? It didn't feel that way to me.
No, they didn't, and that they made. And again, this is where WikiLeaks has spelled the end of privacy in our world. But WikiLeaks brought out that the Clinton campaign kind of dissed Catholics, that it really didn't care about working class whites. That they said, well, we can take the Obama coalition and just have our blue wall. And the reality is that the Obama coalition only worked for Obama. That Trump got higher percentages of black voters, of Latino voters. The only group, and he did the same as essentially as Obama did among women. The only group that really didn't go more for Trump was Jews. Jews voted more for the Democrat this time than they did for Obama. And the Democrats just didn't go for him. They said, no, we don't need these people. They're dying off. Now, you and I have talked about this thing. It's not really good for the base of your party to be older and dying off. That's true.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you to clarify. Who's dying off? The base of the Democratic Party?
The base of the Republican Party is dying off. I mean, older white folks are not an increasing base of this country. That's not a good foundation on which to build a long-term political coalition. However, can you win one election with them? Yeah. If everything comes together right, you can. If you turn people out and Clinton didn't, the New York Times did a really great piece yesterday about Milwaukee and how many mostly black voters in Milwaukee didn't turn out and vote for Clinton. And they were proud of it. They were not happy with her. They did not buy in, and I think she paid to a certain extent for her husband's legacy. If you don't turn out that part of your base in significant numbers, and you don't go and visit the state, because she did not visit Wisconsin after the convention. She sent Bernie and Elizabeth Warren and Tim Kaine, but she didn't go. If you do that stuff, you're playing with fire, and fire won. So, that's why I say...
You know what? Fire didn't win. An elitist lost. An elitist lost. Nothing won. Trump didn't win. I will not acknowledge that he won the election. I will acknowledge that she lost the election.
She lost it. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
There was one great statistic that came out this week, and it was the most telling statistic. And I'll give you a little quiz. It's a 2-part quiz.
Oh, no.
What percentage of the electorate said it hated both candidates?
Oh, it was like 70%.
No, that hated both.
Hate? Hate strong. 30%?
The answer was 19%. So that's a lot of votes. That's a fifth of the voter.
The word the word hate invalidates it for me. I don't know about that.
Satisfied. 19% of the vote of the electorate was not happy with this choice. That's roughly 25-30 million votes, right? Okay.
That's horrible.
Of that nation, what was the vote Trump, vote Clinton? Or which candidate won and by how many points among the 19% who hated them both?
Ooh. Trump.
By how much?
Half? Like a little more than half?
49-29.
Yikes.
I mean, I
That's
imagine
so
very
bad.
much pulled in, that they pulled in a quarter of the vote of people who hated the two primary options. That makes sense. But so Trump wins 20% of the electorate that despises both of them by a huge margin. he basically wins half of the vote that hates them all. That's, a little more than 20% of his total. That's significant. I mean, the guy's losing right now by almost 1.25 points. It's up to 1.6 million votes. He's down at 47% and thinking. You think that in those states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, roughly the 100,000 votes in those three states that gave him the election, that he won the vote of people who hated him and Hillary both? He did. I'm sure he did, because he was something different. He had a message. You don't have to like the message, but he had one. And I just think that's what's so interesting about it, is that this sense of, boy, I really hate my choice. Which one am I going to vote for? And I told you that I said this back in December, that if you go into the final weekend, historically, if the challenger has not been put away and it's a close race with the undecided, the challenger wins. And that's what happened.
Yeah. That is what happened.
The polls weren't wrong. I'm amazed at all the bloodletting among pollsters. They weren't wrong. They had her winning by 3 points, 3.5 points. She's going to win by 1.5, 2 points. The polls weren't wrong. They were wrong in some states, but there wasn't real significant polling in certain states because the candidates weren't going there.
Make any Thanksgiving week predictions about the poly-celebrity people, the celebritocracy, the elite ruling class that we have, who will enter the sphere during Thanksgiving week? I'm sure we're going to get a well-wish from, tweet from the president-elect. I'm sure the Obamas. Is anybody going to say anything of note?
It depends on if it depends on who the appointments are, who the cabinet appointments are, if there are any. He promised some Sunday. He didn't do them. He didn't give any Monday either. Does that mean that he's waiting until Wednesday night to introduce Secretary of Interior Palin, or somebody else? I don't know. I think maybe the pardoned turkeys will be the purveyors of empathy this weekend. I don't know.
Well, whatever happens, we'll talk about it next week here on Trigger Warnings. John, it's been a pleasure.
As always, sir.
I say gobble gobble to you, and I am very thankful for our continued partnership in this podcast.
And I am looking forward to my vegetarian Thanksgiving that has been imposed upon me by my family.
Ooh.
So I am going to find creative vegetarian fare to prepare for the big weekend. And we don't have any family to fight with. We're not seeing any family, so there's no fight about politics.
Well, we'll make that tofu great again, and
That's right. Make tofu great again.